back. It's good to see you again, my friend Colt.
Always a good time.
Yes, always a good time on the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. I just love saying that.
I do too. I really do.
So how's your week?
It's been another week, man.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I can't see why.
It's okay. It's okay. I'd rather have just another week than, say, somebody dies or a plane crashes into your brand new car or something like that.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It's been a shorter week. We've got Christmas here on the horizon very soon.
Yeah, man. How's that going? How's the Christmas prep?
Well, we're in my basement right now, and if you look over at my tree, there is all these presents under there that are wrapped. So I think we're ready.
Good. It's a good-looking tree, too.
Do you really feel like it's Christmas right now or no?
Yeah, I think so, mostly because I have kids.
Okay.
And so with the kids, you have to really perpetuate that whole Christmas magic,
Right.
They don't believe in Santa Claus. We kind of steered away from that.
Okay.
We let it go for a while, when, especially my daughter, when she was younger, she just kind of naturally believed in Santa because everyone else does.
Right.
But we never told her either way. We might have made some subtle references to Santa or Old Saint Nick, as you would have it. But we never really got into the whole, Santa's coming, he's coming down the chimney that we don't have. So he has a Santa key. That's how he gets into the house. He's, he's really just breaking and entering, but he's bringing you presents, so it's okay.
Right.
So we never really got into that, but there's still a Christmas magic just about it, the holidays. So we try to make it as good for them as possible. And so you're almost forced to get into the Christmas spirit when it comes to that, unless you're just a terrible parent.
Right.
Or some other religion that doesn't believe in Christmas and, whatever, right?
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, this is a new house for us. We haven't been in it real long, and so it's the first year that we've really been. It's the first year that this has really felt like a home for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the stockings up, we got the Christmas tree up, we got everything decorated, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I think it's just been a crazy year in general, and there's no snow outside. It's just cold. So
yeah.
it just doesn't feel like it's Christmas yet. But I guess here in a couple of days, I won't have a choice but to feel Christmassy.
Well, it's important to remember also, Colt, that you're grown up now.
I don't like that part.
And as a grown up, you don't get the same Christmas feeling. At least I don't.
I don't get the feeling, but no matter what, I still can't sleep on Christmas Eve. I really can't. Like I'll be up. I'll sleep for an hour and then I'll be up. And I don't know if that goes back to that's the way I always was when I was a kid, just excited for it. But I don't really have that excited feeling anymore. It's just a matter of, might just be I know it's going to be a busy day, so I can't sleep. I don't know.
Maybe a little
one of those things.
Pre-Christmas anxiety. Knowing of the festivities, the hustle bustle.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just a habit because, before you were waiting for Santa to come in and you were going to try to catch him in the act.
That's true.
I know I did. And I never did catch he's a sneaky guy. Very sneaky.
It may be that I'm nervous about the torture I'm going to put my body through with all the food.
Yeah.
That's a possibility too.
Yeah, that is a good possibility.
Yeah. That couch will become my best friend by the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I learned something new this week.
Okay.
So it's hard for me with two kids. My girl's 8, my boy's 5. And it's hard for me to manage time to do certain things around them, because they're clingers.
Right.
They're Klingons. They like to cling on daddy and mommy too. But so exercise, getting in my workout is always a challenge because I have to do the daddy thing,
Mm-hmm.
So this past week I started exercising with my 8-year-old.
Okay.
Of course, I can't get her out there in the garage and do some lifting or hitting the bag or anything like that, but just started doing some jumping jacks with her and some really aerobic stuff. I probably look like a complete fool, I'm sure. Luckily, it's just me and her, and she thinks it's funny and fun. So I have adapted and learned how to exercise with her. And so I'm still getting in some cardio, some conditioning, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'll turn on some Justin Timberlake.
There you go.
And she loves it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad. It's good to do jumping jacks too,
right?
And some knee raises. And I'll break out into a full out dance. I'm sure it looks fantastic,
right,
to anyone who might be peeking through the window. But yeah, so I just thought I would share that because the Christmas thing reminded me of it. Having to adapt to the holiday season is a big deal, and it's a big stressor.
Right.
You know, in the mental health field that I work in, a lot of the people that I work with, that I work for, you know, the clients, most of them don't have somebody for the holidays, and so it becomes kind of this duplicitous, two-sided. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to be happy, but life sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really kind of brings you back to reality to think, man, you know, not everybody has the same perspective and the same upbringing and experiences that you or I have had, and other people as well. But, you know, they're the misfortunate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is that. And so they have to adapt to the Christmas time in a different way than we do. It's a different kind of stress.
Exactly.
You know, our stress is trying to make it to mom's house and then grandma's house and then back here and get to the couch before I completely just blow my belt into smithereens because I've eaten so much ham and and all the other, you know, the fudge, the peanut butter fudge. I know. I love the peanut butter fudge. My mom makes some spectacular peanut butter fudge. But that's my stress.
Right.
You know, and making sure the kids are happy and making sure that they're not breaking through the windows and, you know, because they're extra excited. It's Christmas.
Right. Well, to go back to what you were saying, though, and we don't have to necessarily hit on this topic at this time, but I think it's very important what you're doing, especially that you're making it fun for your daughter, because the earlier that a child can learn exercise and things like that, and especially if they can learn it in a fun way to where they want to do it, the better off they're going to be and the healthier they're going to be from an early age. I think it's very important. I see a lot of people who just eat McDonald's with their kids constantly, and that's it. And they're, you know, and they wonder why they're 6 and 150 pounds. You know, it's just, and then they want to blame other people for it when it's because they didn't want to cook. So they took a decently healthy meal for their kids. So they took them to McDonald's to give them chicken nuggets 10 times in a week. You know, I think what you're doing is very important. I think you're definitely on the right track.
Well,
for
thanks,
sure.
man. Thanks.
For sure.
And I had that in mind as well, you know, because it was kind of it was for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to some extent, because I don't want to become docile, because that leads to more docility.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to more laziness,
Mm-hmm.
and you get out of that groove, and then you're screwed. You know, it's hard to get back up after you've already lost your momentum.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I also thought about that. I'm like, you know, she's up and she's exercising, she's expending that energy. You know, I'm not just putting her in front of the TV, in
Right.
front of the babysitter. You know how I feel about the babysitter.
Right.
You got to kill the babysitter, right?
That's right. Yep.
And to kill the babysitter, it's easy. You know, all you have to do is turn it off.
Right.
You know, and do something productive and active with your children. You know, and sometimes that involves playing Legos with Bubba, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or it involves exercising with Kayla now, and I'm loving it. It's something that happened to me this week. It was kind of an epiphany, a profound moment. So,
Well,
here
you
we
know, I'm in the gym quite a bit, and there's actually a couple that's in the gym that bring their son in. Their son can't be more than 10, something like that. And they've got him in there. He's deadlifting, and he's doing everything that his parents are doing. And that's cool. That's cool that he's lifting. That's cool that he's exercising and stuff. But it's almost overdoing it for his age, just because of what he's doing. You know, they can say that lifting at a young age can stunt your growth and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily going into that. I'm just saying that I think that at a young age, there's no reason to be doing things that can possibly injure you and things like that. But, you know, on the other hand, at least he's not just sitting on his butt in front of the Nintendo playing, you know. So
yeah, I think, you know, in moderation for one thing, but you're
Right.
also not, you know, you're not getting your 10-year-old up to 50 pounds and then jacking it up to 75 because he can finally do 5 reps.
exactly.
So I think the process is probably important, as long as you're not getting too serious about it.
Right.
But even if you're just putting some of those plastic, you know, weights that, you know, only weigh, you know, a couple of ounces each on a bar and let him go through that process with you, I think that could probably be
Definitely,
pretty
for sure,
productive,
yeah.
you know, because it's just getting the child, it's conditioning him
Mhm.
or her, getting them used to being active, and he will even know the form when he gets older because he's practiced it so much as a child.
Exactly.
And then when he does put on some serious weight, you know, he'll already kind of be on the right track.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, staying active is important.
Yep.
Adapting to your children.
Yep.
Adapting to the Christmas holiday. Trying not to eat too much peanut butter fudge.
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much encapsulates everything that we've gone over so far.
Good. Well, let's get to the podcast challenge.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
So this week, Colt, you challenged me to listen to a podcast that I'm familiar with, which is the Joe Rogan Experience. All hail Joe Rogan. He's, one of the podcast kings. He's up there. If he's not number one, he's like number 1.5, right?
Right.
Because I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who does it more naturally and just has better shows than he does.
The only person I can think of, don't they say that is Adam Carolla? Don't they say he's the godfather of podcasting? Like he was at the forefront of it?
Yeah, they do.
But I think that's the only reason. I think it was because he was the very beginning of it. I don't think that means that he's at the top of it.
Exactly. And of course, it's all opinion-based.
Right.
You might think that one guy's better than the other, and somebody else might think the opposite. So that is what it is. But, yeah, I think with Carolla, it's more of the time because he was, one of the pioneers.
Gotcha.
One of the forerunners. He was a forefather,
right,
if you will. He's like the George Washington of podcasting. George Washington was the first president. Doesn't necessarily make him the best president.
Right.
Right? So at any rate, I listened to this particular episode that you challenged me with, and Rogan was interviewing a young lady by the name of Ciara Lynch. And Ciara has made quite a good living. She's mentioned she has 2 houses in Portland. Okay, and Portland is not a cheap place to live. Paid for her education, and she's still going strong by selling poop. Specifically, selling her poop. Which, that's an oversimplification, okay? Selling her poop is something that she has done. As a matter of fact, with one particular client, she's made about $12,000 selling her poop, putting it in a box, putting it in the mail, UPS or whatever she does, FedEx, I don't know, whatever, however she sends it. And he pays her, I think, $3,000 per log, if you will.
Per log. I like it.
Maybe it's per box. I don't know. So there might be, there might be several logs in one box. I'm not sure, if she charges per log or if she charges just per dump, because that could be 2 very different things.
It's very possible.
Because sometimes in one dump you could lay 4, 5, 6, 7 logs.
Definitely depends on your diet.
Yeah, talk to me after Christmas.
Yeah.
If someone would buy my poop after Christmas, then I could probably make a pretty good chunk of money.
Right.
At any rate, though, her main business is fetish videos. She's what does she call herself? A
dominatrix.
No, it's something. It was a humiliatrix.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Because her thing is being the domineering person, which is what a dominatrix is.
Yeah.
But she focuses more on just humiliating people. And so she actually has this call line, like a 1-900 number, where you call and they got that sexy voice and call me now. I know you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning watching this channel with this sucky show that nobody else is watching except for people who have nothing better to do than pay $1.99 per minute to call and talk to me. But she has one in particular that is focused on her just berating the caller, just insulting them. Okay, so here's my thing. Okay, so we've talked about the poop, and she also sells her pee, her spit, and her toenail clippings as well. So my knee-jerk reaction is, okay, this is a pretty weird chick, right? Mm-hmm. But she's really not. I mean, she definitely has her fetish thing herself, because anyone who could go through with this, obviously, I mean, it's not what grandma would do. Or, I think most women, they would feel highly uncomfortable with a lot of the things that she does. But here's my real question. Who are these guys?
Right.
Who are the guys out there? And listen, this could be the guy that you're sitting next to at the bus stop, or a guy across the line at work, or across from the desk or the counter at McDonald's even. It could be the guy you're sitting next to in church.
Never know.
Could be. But who are these people and their secret lives, the things they like? Who likes to get a box of crap in the mail with some toenail clippings sticking out of it? If you could imagine, like maybe like I don't know, like little birthday candles sticking out of a big old pile of dung, right?
Well, you know what's crazy to me about that one is that it's not even. I mean, of course, the sending poop in a box in the mail is weird, or wanting to get that is weird. But she also has like even higher up CEOs and stuff like that in companies who literally will give them or give her their credit card information or their bank account information and want her to tease them that she's going to use that against them and take their money. I mean, that's where the whole humiliatrix thing comes in is I mean, it's got to be something wrong in the brain to make you want that kind of thing, or just how you were raised or something. I don't understand where that comes from. That's just that's almost even weirder to me than the whole poop thing.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the psychological aspect of it. And I don't know, this very well could be a product of the first world problem, first world solution kind of segments that we do.
Okay.
Because at some point in time, you don't have to worry about food, shelter. A lot of these guys are probably married, so they have the whole relationship thing going. They probably have, some of them definitely have good jobs, great jobs.
Right.
As a matter of fact, some of the richest people are some of the most perverted people, at least from the research that I've done. And so their problem at this point is a lack of satisfaction in life. And this podcast is designed to invoke critical thinking, right? That's what we want to encourage.
Yep.
So we don't just want to bring this topic up just for the sake of, a bunch of weirdos and this lady who is profiting from their weirdness and exposing her weirdness in a way that, is also, productive for these guys in some way or another. Right. It satisfies some kind of a need they have. And so to critically think about that, to get into the psychological aspect of it, I think personally that for the most part, these people, I doubt that, well, I mean, let's be honest. Anybody who's struggling to make ends meet isn't going to pay to call a phone line for someone to humiliate them or send for a bottle of spit from some lady that they don't even know.
Right.
These are people who are well off enough to pay thousands of dollars for a box of Dookie, And so there has to be something lacking other than basic needs or even basic wants, because this is out there, man. This is in left field, right?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that's normal. And so, if I ever get to that point, just go ahead and take me out of the legs, right? Because if I ever get so satisfied in life that I need to go after some kind of a fetish like this in order to, make me churn, to make the wheels turn again,
mm-hmm.
I'm done, man. I'm done with it. You got to take me out. But it is also a product of our Western culture. It's a product of where we're at today. It's a product of having it too good, being spoiled. This has to be, I just about guarantee, a Western civilization phenomenon.
I think so.
I think so. I do. I don't have anything to back that up. No science to back that up. But yeah.
Right.
So yeah, Ciara Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't advise anybody to go check her out. If that's your thing, then I'm not sure why you're listening to this podcast. But it was interesting, nonetheless. Definitely an interesting study into human behavior. And once again, whenever you come across anything like this, don't just focus on the Sierras out there, on the dominatrix or the humiliatrix or whoever is actually facilitating this kind of action. Try to direct your attention to who it is that she is, satisfying that need for, because that is a more pervasive part of our populace, our the people out there who are needing that and paying for that.
That's where more of the issues are coming from. It's more of the person that needs this stuff than who is actually providing it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, there you have it. I couldn't listen to the whole thing, but like I said, I got the gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you hadn't challenged me with that particular podcast, it's not something I would have listened to.
Right.
I would have listened to a little bit of it and I'd face palm, slap, probably more just like slapping myself in the face, just like wake up. This has got to be. This isn't real. But
Right.
at any rate, I challenged you this week to a podcast. Why don't you go ahead and introduce us to what you heard?
Well, speaking of podcasts that you don't know if you would ever listen to if you weren't challenged with it, this is very interesting. So you gave me The World of Phil Hendry. So you told me prior to doing this podcast that he's been around for a long time. I don't know the background of him. Do you know he was just in radio beforehand or what?
Yeah, I believe you kind of caught me off guard with this one. I don't have my Phil Hendry history. I haven't really looked into him in a while, but I believe he was just a radio DJ, just like a music DJ at one point in time, who kind of integrated into talk show.
Okay.
But yeah, he's had a radio talk show for a long time. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of the history that I know of him.
Okay, so he introduced this podcast with basically saying that any voices that you hear on this thing is him. The only thing that he doesn't do or with his voice is like any kind of background noise, like truck driving by or anything like that. Outside of that, this podcast was insanely genius, is how I want to describe it. For somebody to be able to do this with all these different voices to make all these different conversations with each other is insane. But you have to be somewhat of a genius to be able to pull it off, I think.
So he made that disclaimer at the beginning of the show you listened to?
Yes.
That all the voices were him?
Yes.
Because that was one of the best things. See, I used to listen to his radio show. Actually, I downloaded it from a torrent, and I just got maybe 50 episodes. And I used to listen to it while I was on the line at the factory back then. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, I didn't know that he was doing all the voices. And that's what made it so just like groundbreaking when I finally figured it out, because it took me a while, but it came to fruition within my own mind. I actually thought about it. I'm like, this is all him. And I was just blown away.
Well, I mean, if for somebody to listen to it, you have to think about it's almost very hard. It would be very hard for him to have a group of people together to put together the kind of show that he does. It's almost like he would have to plan out every voice, every person, because I mean, he's literally doing interviews with himself on the show in this episode.
Yeah, with different characters.
Right.
Yeah.
And he will be the interviewer, and he's doing an interview with somebody, and then he's doing the voice of somebody in the background that's there with the interviewee.
Yeah, like a producer. Or
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
So he has to. There's got to be some genius in there somewhere, for him to be able to pull this off. But it's insane. If you think about it, just being a regular show with a bunch of people, it's not nearly as cool or nearly as thought-provoking as it is if you realize that he is doing every voice that you're listening to.
Yeah, that's right, because each voice has its own character.
Right.
They come off with things that are particular to that imaginary personality. Mm-hmm. And that comes out every time they talk. And one of the funniest things is sometimes he'll get kind of caught up. He'll slip up and start talking in one voice, and he's really trying to use the other character's voice. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it that much funnier.
Did you listen to this particular episode that you gave me?
No, I didn't listen to it all.
No,
I started it.
It's pretty funny because he's doing the voice of this woman who is talking about she's an expert in children who think that their parents are, quote, lame. And lame is like her technical term, her professional term that she uses for it and stuff, and talks about how she takes her son dancing and stuff like that because it makes him grow as a person and will make him have a better relationship with women in the future because he dances with his mom and all this other stuff, which I think would be the opposite effect. But anyways, it was definitely on the opposite side of the spectrum from what I would normally listen to.
Right. I found it very, very entertaining for a long time. And the thing about Phil Hendry is, one of the reasons why I'm intrigued by him is because he is actually political, in his approach and in his topic. Maybe not in episodes like the one that I give you, but if you follow him at all, he's a leftist, but he has some pretty strong political views. And once you know that, you see that coming out in his show through all these different characters, which, once again, to be able to keep up with all the different characters like he does, and he does phone calls too. And it sounds like they're on the phone.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. When I was saying the interview or an interviewee, that was mainly, it was a phone call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hilarious. I love it. So, yeah. But you had another podcast episode that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, one that we didn't challenge each other with, but I wanted to hit it because I think it had a lot of big points in it that are important for what we want to get across as far as broadening our thinking or thinking outside the box, basically. So it was The Art of Charm, which I know is one of your favorites, if not your most favorite podcast that you listen to. And he actually had author Sally Hogshead on the podcast. She's done a lot of work with different brands, like Jägermeister. She did with them. I want to say she worked with a couple of car companies as well, and stuff like that. But a lot of brand work, even like just the words that they use that explains their company and things like that. And they do a lot of the statistics where they actually go out and not necessarily interview people, but follow people and get stats off of, like, when she worked for Jägermeister, they would go to bars and they would get stats on these kids, when they were drinking, what time of night they were drinking, what days they were drinking, all this other kind of stuff. But the things I really want to hit on, which, if you give me 1 second, it totally went away on my computer. I don't know what happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're having some technical difficulties right now. If you will just please remain seated.
That's not it. Hang on. 2 seconds. Okay, there it is. Okay. All right. So, first thing I want to hit with, and I really want your opinion on this, the sentence, being different is better than being better. I want to get what your take is on this, what your opinion is on that sentence.
Okay.
Being different is better than being better.
So that statement, I get it, but it's loaded. Okay, so I've known some people in my life who are the epitome of different, right? And it didn't work for them. Okay, and I've known some people. Of course, it's very relative. Better at what? And what is better? Does better mean make more money? Does it mean make more friends? Does it mean being more adaptable to survival? And so, but where she's coming from means that being different, being original, I think is a better way to put it. Being original is better than being better, because you are coming from a point to where you have more of a genuine feel, a genuine presentation, genuine approach, a genuine personality, as opposed to that someone, say in basketball, all right, being better is going to be more valuable than being different. Okay, and so if you can jump higher, run faster, shoot from a further distance, things like that, that's obviously going to propel you into a better situation while playing basketball.
Right.
You're going to have more fans. You're going to make more money. You're going to get more sponsors, things like that, or whatever. But so I get what she's saying there. So let's focus simply on what we're doing on podcasting. Okay, so being different is definitely good because it catches the imagination, the attention of people. Okay, so let's say there's 5 podcasters who are all doing the same thing. Let's say they're all talking about politics. So if you want, in that particular genre or that particular niche of podcasting, then you're probably going to need to be better than everybody else. But what does that mean? Does that mean you articulate more clearly? Does it mean you have more information, better guests, better information, period? So being different might give you the attention that you need, because people get tired of hearing the same old. Okay, well, this guy articulates his ideas better, but overall his show sounds just like somebody else's. To whereas if you have something different, a different kind of format, something like, I like the Best of the Left as well. I don't agree with a lot of their politics. You know, some of them I feel like they're just militant left-wing lunatics. Really, they find something to combat that happens to be on the right side of politics, and they go absolutely bat crap crazy on it. But the formatting of it is different because it's all clip based with bumper music in between every one of them. It just drew me in because of that, because it was different. Now, if it were just a show let's just take each individual show. I've checked out a lot of those shows, but I don't listen to them regularly.
Right.
Not even close to the frequency that I listen to the best of the left. And so in that sense, being different was better than being better.
Right.
Does that make sense, or am I just ranting?
No, you're right. And I take that, and I never even thought about the podcasting aspect of it. That makes a lot of sense too. But the other thing they hit on with it was say you're new at a company, you just started, and you think about this term being different is better than being better. So if you put yourself in a position where you're trying to be better than somebody else, you're actually putting yourself in a competition with someone else. Mm-hmm. When you don't really need to be in a competition with somebody to be better than them, but by being different or doing things a different way, or bringing new ideas or different ideas can help you and push you farther along faster than just trying to compete and be better than someone else.
Yeah, and that's a great way to frame it, because being different oftentimes makes you better.
Right.
And so what you're talking about is a thought process or a framework to build your platform from. Because I think everybody's goal is to be better. Mm-hmm. Competition is basically, it's what it's all about in the human race, even in the animal world. I mean, if you're the biggest tiger, right, then you pretty much rule the jungle.
Right.
All the other tigers got the plains wherever they live, mm-hmm. but you pretty much you rule, right, because you got the bigger set of nuts, you got the bigger set of claws. You are the king of the jungle. That's a lion, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So being different actually makes you better. But one thing that I've noticed also is that the quote itself, being different is better than being better. All right. So you could say being different is different than being better.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to me that almost makes more sense, because it's not a universal term. I think you have to put it in the correct framework for that to work for you.
Right.
You have to have something that's still, depending on what you're aspiring to do, but you have to have something that's marketable. You have to have something that's going to catch people's attention, which is where the different comes in. But it might catch their attention because they think it completely sucks, and now that it's got their attention,
that's true,
they turn away from it.
Right.
But her overall approach, I like it because it's different, and what it's meant to do is get you a little out of your comfort zone, out of your typical way of thinking, getting you out of that rat race competition type of mindset, mm-hmm. and puts you on a different track to where people, what she's trying to do is generate some more creativity and uniqueness within the person and get out of that box that we all tend to live in, because if it's on TV or if Jennifer Aniston is wearing it, or if Brad Pitt is doing it, then it must be cool.
Right. So I have a couple more topics I want to hit on off of this too. And this one I really did think about podcasting right off of the bat. But she said, trying to appeal to everyone will appeal to no one. So in my opinion, I take that as if you are trying to basically appeal, if you're trying to make everyone happy, it's not going to work, is the way I take this. I don't know if you take this, we'll see. But if you can't just try to appeal to one audience, because not everybody's going to like everything. And I feel like this is almost an everyday life situation here too. But I really wanted to focus with you on it with podcasting, because I feel like with our Rogans and with our Art of Charm and with all these different ones that we listen to, I feel like they don't necessarily try to target one audience. They try to really branch out and hit every different audience with every different episode. You're not everybody's going to like every episode, but they're fine with that because they will eventually target that audience with a different episode. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so trying to appeal to everyone, you'll end up appealing to no one. That is a very profound statement there, because when you try to be all things to all people, then you don't oftentimes at least, you don't really connect with anyone in particular. You know, you have to consider your target audience anytime you're speaking or anytime you're marketing anything. You know, there has to be someone who you are targeting. You can't just target everybody. That's impossible. There are too many, you know, differences in personality and variations just in likes and wants and needs and so on and so forth. And so you have to have a target audience, but there's nothing wrong with broadening that, I think, especially after you kind of get your momentum going, after you have the wheels turning. I think that you can, and something that I think that Rogan is pretty good at, and Jordan too, in the AOC, The Art of Charm. Because let me talk about Jordan for a minute. He reaches out to everyone from professionals who are already kind of, you know, where a lot of us would aspire to be with career and status and money and so on and so forth, relationships. But he also targets the people who don't really have any of those things and everyone in between. And so I think the target audience isn't necessarily, it's definitely not based on race or color or creed or anything like that. It's based off of what your goals are, what your aspirations are. And so you have to target your audience based on their desired behavior or the desired outcome in general, as opposed to, well, I want to target this particular show to women only, you know, which there are those out there, and that's fine. But in order to appeal to everyone, you have to cross lines with men, women, you know, Asians, Americans, you know, whatever. People with flat foreheads, people with you know ski slope noses. Right. You know, you just can't do it. People with ski slope noses, they don't like the same things that I do, right? Because I don't have a nose like that. So
because that makes a big difference. I'm sure
it does. So you have another point?
I actually have two more.
Okay.
Another one is master of all makes you master of none. So we kind of talked off air a little bit about being a jack of all trades. And that's where I'm going with this. I want to get your take on some people can be a master of one. Basically, you have one thing that you're really good at. Okay. There's a lot of people out there who are considered a jack of all trades that will be decent at a lot of different things. And it seems it's almost impossible in our culture and in our lives to be professional at a lot of different things. And I talking about podcasts and stuff, going back to Rogan, I think we talked and said that he's one of those that is a very rare type who pretty much everything that he gets a hold of or everything he attempts, he becomes very good at. And you don't see that very often. There's not many people out there. He's one of those guys that'll tell you, if you tell him he's really good at something, he'll be like, no, I'm not very good at it. Because his mindset is, I've still got a lot to learn, or I'm nowhere near the top or the best at this, so there's a lot to work on. But I want to get your take on what you think of this topic.
I've actually used a similar phrase just here recently in my line of work for one of our unit managers who oversees the daily activities and functions of one of our mental health wards. And I told her that it is better to be really good at 5 things than just okay at 10 things. And the reason I told her this is because she tends to take on too much. Yeah, she wants to have her hand in everything. You know, and when that happens, and this goes for anybody, you know, at least for the most part, when that happens, something else is going to suffer, you know. If you can take on 5 things and do those 5 things really solidly, you're going to make a bigger impact than if you take on 10 different, you know, things, activities, undertakings, what have you. Some of those things are going to suffer more because you're not focused enough, you know. I've seen a lot of studies that say multitasking is not what a lot of people make it out to be. You know, you think you're doing okay when you're multitasking, but you don't realize that you're actually not doing so well because you think, well, if I can do all these things at once, then I must be really good at what I'm doing, multitasking. But really, you're not, because if you isolated each one of those things individually, you'd find that your quality is suffering because you're trying to do too many things at once.
And I've seen this concept just in factory work too. I train quite a few people, and I've seen people who you've got your people that are really ambitious, especially when they first start out. And when you're training them, they want to learn everything that they possibly can right off the bat. But I found that it's a lot easier, and you can learn things a lot faster if you go slow and you get really good at certain things slowly, rather than trying to learn everything at one time, and then all of a sudden your mind is in a whirlwind because you can't remember the first thing you learned because you've learned 20 things after that, when you could have just gradually over a month or whatever, slowly taken on an extra thing after you got really good at the thing before that. You know what I mean?
Agreed. And that transcends into a lot of things. Playing the guitar, same thing. You want to get really good at the basics of playing chords before you go on into your scales. And then once you start playing scales, you want to make sure that you can play certain forms of that scale before you move on to the next form, because you want to be good as you go along. That way it gives you more of a solid foundation. And such is life in work, and if you train to be a fighter, same thing. You got to be in shape before you go out there. I had a buddy, his son, he wouldn't do the training. He wanted to go out and fight, and so he would get on a ticket somewhere, just some small time, local fighting that would come to town, and he'd get on the ticket, but he didn't really realize that they were just kind of getting him out there so that the other guy could have a punching bag, so the other guy could get a win under his belt,
right?
Because he wouldn't train, my buddy's son. And so you got to put in the work to get good at something,
right?
And there's only so much time in the day, and you can't put in that much work into a whole slew of things,
right?
Because something is going to suffer. And so another great quote by Ms. Hoghead, because it's absolutely true. I agree with it 100%. And there's a lot of science behind what she's saying there. Absolutely. That's not, in my opinion, that's not opinion based. That's at least at the very least a meta study of human behavior.
Right.
Sure.
The only other thing I wanted to hit on, and I don't know if this will branch off into anything or not, or it might just be we might just figure it out real quick. But she talks about what you think your value is. And I'm curious to see what your opinion is on it. You can think of sports figures, stuff like that. They're gonna, how they play is basically what they think their value is gonna be for when they sign a new contract or whatever. But I want to break that down into our everyday lives, something that's not millions and millions of dollars, something that's our everyday lives. How important do you think it is to know what your value is, and how do you think you should figure that out? Yeah. What you think, what your value should be?
So when you talk about value, you're referring to monetary value. How much are you worth in dollar signs?
Well, that we can go that route, or we can go just a matter of just your position.
Okay.
As well.
So I'll use both, because one cascades into the other, at least to some extent. If you're trying to calculate what you are worth in dollar signs per se, in my opinion, unless you're doing something like sports or you're climbing the ladder in business or something like that, just for a job like mine or like yours as well, value starts before you actually start calculating money. For me, for instance, my goal and my philosophy is, how much value can I be to the individuals around me? Not the company as a whole, but to each individual, okay? And so I really start from a grassroots level. And this is something I've grown into, this was the furthest thing from my mind, when I was 20, 25, even come up into my 30s. It's something I've really started to formulate by taking the value of other people and hoping that I can increase that. So every situation I have, whether I'm doing a training, or whether I'm speaking to a group, or even just having a one-on-one session, or having if I'm mentoring managers or facility administrators, every time I sit in a room with them, I want to make sure that I add value in one way or another, And so by me adding value to them, I am increasing my own value, okay? And so that came the next step. That wasn't my first intention, The first intention was to add value to these people. I have a format here. I have something that I can increase in their lives. If they'll take it, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I make sure that when I have the opportunity to add value, that I make sure I take that opportunity with all seriousness, within myself. But over time, I realized that this was adding value to me. Okay, so I am becoming a more and more valuable person within my home facility, within the other facilities I reach out to, within the state, with different entities that I work with, for the good of the people that they serve. And so my value is increasing. Now, we're not talking about monetary value up to this point.
Right.
We're talking about just value as a person reaching out and helping other people. But then I started to notice that my value was increasing because I became more and more needed. I became more necessary in my field. And so as that takes place, then I figure that's when I personally can start adding an idea, at least, of how much I am worth in dollar signs. They're not necessarily symbiotic, okay? But they do have a correlation, and there is some causation too. But it doesn't have to be that way. Is that confusing yet?
No, you're good.
Okay, so what I'm saying is there's a correlation between how much value I can add to people and how much that value I'm actually worth. Okay, and so that can translate into dollar signs, because the more I'm needed, obviously the more leverage I have to ask for more money, if you want to put it point blank.
Right, and you're basically getting or hitting on everything that I was thinking about too. I was just thinking too about the consequences of thinking your value is too high or too low compared to what it actually is, and where that can lead to.
That's a very good concept.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like your value is too low, and there's something interesting that the AOC talks about, and that is the imposter's complex. And that is when you get so far in life and you look back and you're like, man, I don't think I really deserve this. All of a sudden you're like, man, I faked my way through this, and I don't belong here, and I'm going to be revealed. They're going to find out that I really don't belong here, and I'm going to be embarrassed. And I think that's somewhat of a product of what you're talking about, valuing yourself too low. And the same with valuing yourself too high. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Because people are never going to live up to the expectations that you feel like, they should have for you. So if someone has a high expectation of me, then I expect that they're going to, reimburse me accordingly, right?
Right.
And whether that's monetarily or just in status, if it's strictly a social thing, I might think, well, I'm the coolest guy at this party, so everybody should come talk to me. Well, in all honesty, I'm overvaluing myself because there's probably a lot of cooler people in the party than me, right? And so once that doesn't come, to surface, once I realize, hey, they're not hanging on my every word, what's that going to cause me to do? There's a lot of different avenues you could take there. It could cause me to lash out. It could cause me to be just a jerk. It could cause me to, cry in the corner, huddled in the fetal position. I've done that a couple times, I'll be honest.
So from what I get is what you're saying is you want to try to find a happy medium with yourself on where your value's at, as far as you want to feel like everything that you've got you earned, but you can always increase your value to a higher status, and you could always be at a lower value, and you don't want to go down to that position either.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And my main target always in whatever I do, and just as much in this as anything else in life, is to be realistic. Whether I value myself too low or too high, the word there to focus on is too, TOO. Because if I'm valuing myself too low, that means I'm missing the mark. If I value myself too high, I'm missing the mark. That means I'm not being realistic about my true value, And so that comes from not being observant. It comes maybe from, being narcissistic or egotistical, or on the opposite side, having a lack of ego, being depressed, so on and so forth. Not a lack of self-confidence,
right,
is definitely one of the precipitators of such of a mindset. And so being realistic is one of the best things that anybody can do. And it sounds easy. It's easier said than done. I haven't always been realistic in my life, but it's something that everyone should aspire to do. And you're absolutely right when you say that you need to understand your true value and always have aspirations to be of more value. And once again, that could mean monetarily, but if it starts there, then chances are you're on a slippery slope.
Right. It's got to start with your work ethic and things like that before it becomes dollar signs.
Absolutely. It's all about relationships. It's all about relationships with people. When you value true relationships with people, genuine relationships with people, honest relationships with people, your value will increase. Okay? And you never want your value to decrease, because if it does, that means chances are you're either not doing something right or you're in the wrong environment or with the wrong crowd.
Well, I think that's a big point too, is the wrong environment, especially when it depends on what kind of job you're working or anything like that. You can let your environment give you the value that, let me try how I want to word this. You can have a certain value, but if you feel like the environment you're in isn't valuing you up to your standards, that can drop your value as far as like your work ethic. If you don't feel like you're being appreciated where you work, and I put that in air quotes, appreciated, or things like that, or you're not getting the raises that you want or whatever, that's going to probably drop your work ethic, which in turn, from a company point of view, makes you feel like your value is lower than what you think it is already. So you're in turn going to decrease your value as far as work ethic and things like that because of the way the environment around you made you think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What you're talking about there is a vicious cycle of interpersonal relationships. And so that's where being realistic really comes into play, because you once again, you may not feel like you're being appreciated. But you have to take a really deep dive into what it is you're doing, and are you in the right spot? Is this really where I'm supposed to be? Because if you feel like yes, if the answer to that is yes, so we're on kind of one of those diagrams where you either go one way or the other, you follow the arrows. If the answer is yes, then you've got to move on. If you feel like you're doing all that you can and that you really should be appreciated, then it's time for you to move on, because exactly what you said is what's going to happen. If you stay in that environment, it's going to have an impact on you, on your productivity, on your attitude, and your personality overall, and it's going to be a sinking ship from there. And I see it all the time. People who are unhappy in their position, and they stay there and they just grind and they just hate on people, and they just turn into ugliness. They turn into ugly.
But the other side of that coin is exactly what you said a while ago, is being real with yourself as well. So if you're in a position where you're not putting in a lot of effort, but you automatically think that your value is a lot higher than what your environment is showing you, you gotta figure out your mindset too, because if you're going into work, what kind of effort you're putting in, and if you're putting in minimal effort, but you have a mindset thinking that I should be getting more, then in turn that's going to decrease your value no matter what, in my opinion.
No, and I agree with that. But here's another way to look at that too, though. If once again, you have to go on the predicate that you are being honest and realistic with yourself,
which is very hard to do for a lot of people.
Absolutely, it is. It is, because we're all egocentric to some extent. We all, we're kind of just selfish, especially when it comes to things like feeding our families, or of course it goes up from there. I want a new car, and so I need to make more money to do that, and I want my boss to pay me more. Why aren't you paying me more, boss? But instead of becoming disgruntled, what we should do is increase our intrinsic value, increase our relationships, increase our value to people and thus to the company, and then approach it from there. Don't just keep doing the same thing that you're doing and expect that you're going to be owed something. Expect that that you are entitled at that point in time. It's worth a shot, I guess, for some people to say, okay, I've been doing this job for 5 years now, and I haven't gotten a raise, or my raise was so minimal that it really hasn't impacted my finances, and the cost of living keeps coming up. It's realistic to ask for a raise at that point, I think. But what if you don't get it? What do you do? In my opinion, you have two choices. It's time for you to move. I think that's the first thing you should consider. Can I be of more value somewhere else where I can, kind of start at a higher level of pay, increase in status, whatever it is that you're looking for? Or B, try to increase my value in this current position. Give it a time frame, maybe, give it a year. Say, okay, I'm going to start doing, A, B, and C to increase my value. I'm going to let my boss know that I'm working to achieve these goals. And then you shoot for that. And then the chips will fall where they may, but at least you're taking a proactive response. And you're not just toiling in your own frustration and making everyone else around you completely miserable because you're miserable yourself.
I can't imagine where you got this idea from. Could it possibly be Art of Charm? By chance? The whole give yourself 1 year to decide?
There's probably Art of Charm has influenced me in a lot of different ways, but also I speak from personal experience and other sources too. But yeah, there's no doubt Art of Charm has been a really big influence in me with some things like this. But I work with people, not on employment, career, things like that, but I work with people just setting goals to cope better, or to build relationships better, and not relationships that turn into opportunities such as, a new career. Building relationships so that I'm not being abused anymore, so that I'm not being taken advantage of, things like that. And so we always set goals. We work with SMART goals. I don't know if you've heard of SMART goals. It's a pretty popular format for setting goals. Work with some of those. But yeah, absolutely. I apply a lot of these things from like the AOC and other different sources that I have to apply to myself because they're realistic. And if you're being realistic, then you can take that and you could make sound judgments from that, But like you said, there are so many people out there who that's just so difficult for. It seems like they thrive on toiling and being frustrated and being miserable. And the old saying, misery loves company, I see it in action all the time. And
Sure.
I don't want to be that way.
100%.
And that's another motivation that I have is that I don't want to be like that guy over there because that's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
They suck. And they're making everything around them suck. And so I'm going to stay away from that person. And I don't want to be like that person because I don't want everything to suck around me too. And then people start gravitating away from me.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of sense.
So yeah, great podcast discussion though.
It was a good one, man. I listen to podcasts while I'm at work, and a lot of times if as long as I have the time, if I'm listening to something and good points come up, I'll just grab a small piece of paper and write it down. And as soon as I get home, I'll put it on my laptop. That way we got it for when we're ready to do this again.
Yeah. And so with some of the podcasts, some more so than others, you can, on iTunes or whatever, the podcast app on the Apple phone, you can save the episode, otherwise it deletes off, automatically.
Right.
I've got so many of them saved because I'm like, oh, I love that idea. I got to go back to that. So I'll save it, So I've got 25, 30 saved podcasts at any one particular time because I'm not always in the position. A lot of times I'm driving
right
when I'm listening to them. And I can't always just stop and write them down. Mm-hmm. So I just save them, and I've got tons saved.
My bad thing is most of the podcasts I listen to are like 2 and 3 hours long. So if I want to save one because of an idea, I'm going to have to listen to that whole thing again. So if I start saving, I'm going to have 25 hours of podcasts that I got to go try to find ideas through.
Do they have flags that you can put on a podcast where it saves it at a certain point? Maybe a flag at a certain point?
I don't know, but that's a good idea.
If not, then we need to talk to somebody about making that happen.
Right.
Because that's a great idea. I need that in my life.
Yeah, I'll call up Jobs tomorrow.
He's dead, so good luck with that.
Well, we'll figure out something.
I thought about that, too, on one of our previous episodes. We were talking about Jobs and Steve Jobs, and something you said, I was like, he's talking about him in the present tense. I wonder if he knows that he's dead.
I did know,
yeah.
But the way we were talking about him was in a current status, is what I was trying to say.
I just thought it was funny. I thought it was because it made me giggle. It made me giggle a little bit.
Talking about his turtleneck sweaters.
Yeah, that's right. He wears the same black turtleneck sweater every day.
Probably because he's in a grave in a
Well,
turtleneck sweater.
Now he definitely. I guarantee you, he was buried in that too.
You
Why
think so?
change now? It got him this far.
He may have had a suit over it, but the turtleneck sweater's on.
I doubt it. I bet you he had the turtleneck and the same pants, whatever those were, and his goofy looking glasses and
Gold encrusted glasses or something he had to. He was like a billionaire.
No, they were glasses that you could see into the future. You could see what people wanted to buy, and then he would, project that onto the smart board, and people would program Apple iPhones and iPods, and it's all mind control, man. They got us. They got us.
Think so?
Yeah, but technology, you gotta love it. I love it.
Well, here we are podcasting.
Right.
So what do you think?
Yeah, who was podcasting before Steve Jobs came around?
Nobody.
Not really. No,
that was called radio.
That's what? What's that?
Yeah, it's true. Nobody knows what that is
What's
anymore.
radio? Sounds like it's something that old people used to do or something.
Isn't that what truckers use?
Yeah, there you go. It's a trucker
Talk to
thing.
each other.
I'm not a trucker. Talk to me about the radio stuff.
This is Rusty Nail calling Candy Cane.
Okay, well, this has been a great segment of podcast review.
Love it.
Podcast Junkies Unite, brother.
That's right.
All right.